Awesome. All right. Well, my name is Alyssa.
And I'm Cassidy.
And we are the two education and outreach assistants for the East Kootenay Invasive Species Council, which we'll get into once we have, oh, beautiful. We are rocking and rolling. This is delightful. So welcome so much, oh my gosh. Welcome to Watercolor with Weeds. We're so happy to have everyone here today.
I just wanted to start off by echoing Cheryl's lovely acknowledgement that we are on the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa and the chosen land of the Rocky Mountain Métis. For me, this land is a place that I moved to 3 years ago, and I've made a home here by going paddleboarding. I love to go hiking and just enjoying the great outdoors. But I also work to honor this land and work towards reconciliation by learning the true history of the land we live on and by teaching to my students the full history using a bunch of traditional and different varieties of sources. So thank you everyone for being here. Let's talk invasives. All right, so we are here with the East Kootenay Invasive Species Council. We are a nonprofit environmental organization, and we work to mitigate and educate about invasive species in the area. We have our outreach and education crew, which starts with Alyssa and I touring to farmers markets. We go to school groups. We just go to a variety of different events and talk about invasives and just educate the public on what an invasive species is. We also have our field crew who is boots on the ground working to treat those invasive species that you're learning about today.
Sorry, I just need to move the mic.
Thank you. Ooh.
Speak into it.
Okay.
All right. Perfect.
Alrighty, so we're gonna go over a little bit of Invasives 101, so we're all on the same page of what an invasive plant is. Okay. What an invasive plant is. So an invasive species is a species that's not from here. It's been brought over by multiple different means, whether that's by humans, animals, or different varieties of spread. And an invasive species is going to be causing harm to 3 categories. It's going to be ourselves, so people, society. So that could be if you, for example, have wild parsnip. That's a plant that if you get the sap on you, it can cause severe burns. That would cause harm to us. If we're thinking about our environment, it could be that it's overtaking our natural and our biodiversity forests and areas. And then we also have our economy. So if an invasive species was to come in and wipe out a bunch of croplands, that would obviously hurt our economy.
All right, so Alyssa just said a bunch of really big words, so I just wanted to specify some of the really key terminology that we use when we teach about invasive species. So our first one is the word invasive, which is something, either a plant, an animal, living organism that was brought here from somewhere else, and now that it is in our local environment, it is causing harm. So this could be harm to recreation, to our economy, or to our environment, or a combination of all 3. Another term you may hear being used is introduced or a non-native plant. These are plants that were also brought here from somewhere else. However, these plants are not proven to be causing harm, which is why they're not classified as an invasive in the area. We also have the word native, which is a species that originally grows here and continues to thrive and be a natural part of our environment. And then we have the word weed. This is one that gets mixed up and used a lot kind of instead of the word invasive. And we just wanted to clarify that a weed can be known as any plant that is growing in a spot you don't want it to grow. So if you have a dandelion that's growing in your beautiful garden and you're like, hey, I don't want this plant to be here, it might not be causing harm, but it's not somewhere you want it to be, so therefore the word could be used that would be weed.
All right, so now we're going to get into the paint making process. There are 3 key steps when making the paint. We have the collection, the preparation, and then using and storing the paint.
All right, so we started with our collection. So we went to various areas and we were collecting these weeds. We were looking for things that had a strong pigment so that we can try and get some plant. We also wanted to make sure we knew what the appropriate way to remove that species is. So we want to know how that species spread, and if it's in flower, we're making sure that we're getting the whole plant so we're not just covering its seeds and getting more of it to spread. We also made sure we're using the proper PPE, so we want to be safe, so we were using our gloves, shovels, and bags to get the whole plant so it can be disposed of properly. And every time we left an area, we made sure to dispose of the entire plant. Within the East Kootenays, the appropriate thing for disposal is it should all be put into a garbage bag, and it should go into the household section of a transfer station. If it was to go into compost, there is a chance that these plants could continue to grow and spread.
So then we moved on to our preparation method. So for preparing, you want to crush with a mortar and pestle or chop up the plants into a fineness so that when you put it in your pot and then cover it with water, you're using equal parts water and equal parts plant. It's able to kind of boil down better if you're chopping and mortar and pestling it. And then depending on the strength of the pigment that you want, you can boil it from anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. And it's a low simmer that you're going to be putting it on, because if you put it on a full roaring boil, you're going to run out of water and you're not going to get the appropriate pigment that you want or have enough paint. Another thing that we tried this year was whether freezing the plants before preparing them was a good idea, and if that worked for getting the paint, and we found that freezing the plants beforehand didn't work. So if you're going to do this yourself, harvest the plants appropriately as Cass talked, and then start making the paint immediately. It does not work well if you store the plant for longer periods of time.
Perfect. And then our next step, which is the one you are all here to do with us today, is to use your paints. So if you are not using the paint right away, we say to store it in the fridge for, we haven't tested the exact day, but about 30 days it should last in your fridge. Alyssa and I made most of these paints about 2 weeks ago, and they're still actively pigmented and doing well. And then once we had made all our plants, what we did was we combined some of the plants with pH, because some of them are reactant to pH. So we noticed that when we added lemon juice to some of the plants or baking soda and changed the pH level, it actually changed the color of the plants. So this is a really cool experiment you can kind of do once you've made the plants to see if you can get some more colors out of what you've made. And when we're using it today, we're making sure we're using thick watercolor paper, because that's going to hold up to the moisture, because these were made with plants and water. So therefore, they are going to be quite wet as you're using them. And then, like I said, we refrigerated the plants when we were done, and they should last at least 30 days in your fridge.
So one of the invasive plants we're going to talk about today is blueweed. This is a very common plant, and it's really important when you're harvesting blueweed that you want to make sure that you're wearing gloves, because it is an allergen. So if you're touching it with your bare hands, you can react to that. Blueweed also outcompetes our native species, and it is toxic to horses and cattle.
Perfect. So another one that we did use today, you will see we have a color that was made of this one, is creeping bellflower. When we harvested, we were sure to pull out as much of the plant as we can. It's one you see a lot in gardens and stuff, you'll notice. And it's really aggressively invades lawns, gardens, crowns, and it spreads via seed and by creeping root system. So if you are removing it, you want to be aware that it will spread, will reproduce through the root system as well.
Then we have orange hawkweed. This is not a plant that we have here today, but we do have some beautiful orange colors for you guys. So orange hawkweed creates dense mats when it is, and that crowd out native flowers. And then we also have the petals that produce a really beautiful orange color. Unfortunately, it was out of season, but have no fear. We do have other oranges for you.
Perfect. Dame's Rocket, this was one that it was one of the first ones we saw when we started working with ECUS. It was one that was very early in the season, but we did see some trickling down at the end. So we do have a little bit of paint today that was made using Dame's Rocket.
And it's my personal favorite because how pH reactive it is. It creates the most beautiful pink and green color that we have for you guys today.
And Dame's Rocket is invasive because it outcompetes our native vegetation, so it's going to choke out some of those native species who are unable to grow in the area anymore, which is going to cause a decrease in biodiversity as our native plants are unable to grow.
And then our last one is our oxeye daisy. This is a plant that surprises a lot of people that is invasive. It's very naturalized in our area and can be seen absolutely everywhere. So this species is in a lot of wildflower mixes in garden centers that you can be buying. It also spreads really quickly and establishes really quickly.
Perfect. So up at the front, we have a few resources, and then you have some at your table as well. We have our Protect the Kootenays and the Grow Me Instead. The Grow Me Instead is one of my favorite resources because I'm just starting to learn about gardening, and for me, I was really surprised about how many invasive species are still sold in garden centers. So you want to be really aware of what it is you're growing and making sure it is something that is either introduced and non-native, but it's not causing harm, or it's a native species. We also have our invasive Plants of Alberta book, which we have a few at the front you can take a look at. And we used iNaturalist and the Noxious Weeds of BC book for collecting and gathering information on the weeds we use today to make our water paints.
So we have a variety of invasives that we have today, which include Dame's Rocket and a chicory mix, spotted knapweed, curly dock, common tansy, creeping bellflower, oxeye daisy, and St. John's wort.